I work with my hands. That's why I'm here. I'm here to work. I put my hand on it, put my hand around it, and I built everything myself. I think because I couldn't describe what I wanted to do with words or with drawings, we would just get to work and get on it, get a body up on it. It was based on such a physical experience that there's no possibility even of describing it to someone else. So we would just get to work. Living in Europe contributed to that too. The language barrier. I live in France. I live in Paris, and just now I'm starting to speak French. The language barrier was very productive to me, and it still is, because this idea that the only way you can communicate with the people you work with is in a physical way, a physical process of building. The way that you mix the cement, the consistency of it, cutting wood to size, let the saw make decisions. Force yourself into situations where mistakes will happen, situations of physical risk, working with tools we don't know how to use. Run the tool hot. Run it till it smokes. Have a smoke. Smoke it out. Smoke it till you broke it. I got my name printed on my shirt. I ain't no ordinary dude. I don't have to work. I don't have to work. The physical characteristics of the material are completely arbitrary, and at the same time, absolutely critical to the meaning of the work. I guess you could say that about the process, too. That there's something completely arbitrary about the process, but at the same time, that's absolutely central and critical to the meaning of the work. And like I said, I don't think there's much place for ideas in an artwork. It's a physical thing. So it would be absurd to even talk about conceptual artwork. It's, what's that? It feels good. When you get comfortable with a tool in your hands is when you can start to play with it, make love to it. A real professional doesn't need to show off, but I'm not that, and I do. The most fundamental definition of a sculpture, if you ask me, is using a tool to do something it wasn't meant to do. Using it after hours fucking around. That's my apartment. And at a certain point, I wanted to take the guest room and turn it into my studio. So you can see there in the center, I moved the bed out of the guest room into the center of the living room and built this structure around it. And actually, I could close that area over the bed so that it became kind of a stage, furniture, bed, floor. And it was really a pragmatic thing, something to live with, something for the kids. And I never really thought about it as an artwork, but at a certain point, it ended up like that. Architecture is normally thought of as a way of solving problems, designing for a program, for a set of functions. But my introduction to architecture, or my like idea of architecture, came through the subculture of geodesic domes, outlaw architecture, meth labs, indigenous architecture, where the intention was actually normally the inverse of normal architecture. So in geodesics, for example, the idea was to follow a particular structural problem or a set of geometric rules And function was an afterthought. Like how you would live in a space wasn't really that important. It was more about following the geometry. And what happens is that living in one of these structures becomes a decision to subject yourself to architecture. Architecture isn't a means to improve your life, it actually might make it worse. That's again like the kind of Burton Hawley idea of architecture. So then this kind of idea of architecture is as something that forms you, forms behavior. And so when you recognize that, the preference is not for something that's comfortable, but for the least comfortable, the most difficult, the most challenging. The object demands respect. Give it some respect. Submit. So that would mean opening a new way of being, a new way of existence. Call it a lifestyle. A lifestyle is a way of performing on the world. An object with a lifestyle. A way of living that transforms space. Wet it till you can see through it. I get it wet and stare at it. Run a hand over it and stand under it. I press my palm to it and tear it a bit. Peer through it. Stick a finger in it and oil it. Grease it good. Grease on wood. Grease on steel. Oil on cloth. Stain on brick. Paint on skin. Skin on wire. Skin on wood. Oil on the floor. Sand on steel. A warm cock on ice. Standing on a silvery pier. Standing there. I'm standing on a silvered, burnt barge on a sea of ice. See if I care. Flint on tar, tar on paper, tar on skin, spent shells, powdered paint, rubber on lead, lead on ink, lead on grass, grass on steel, glass on steel, gas on cloth, blistered plastic, pallets, ingots on pallets, pallets on pile, peas and grease, blood on fleece, soot, papered wire, enamel on steel, enamel on glass, glued glass.